Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 20th Educational Affairs meeting. We're very excited to be here this evening. We have two great presentations. I'd like to take roll call. So we'll go through Ms. Wachowski-Smith.
Here.
Ms. Woodsett.
Here.
Ms. Dolay.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mrs. Walkman.
Here.
And Mrs. Holt.
Thank you.
The Educational Affairs Board members have received minutes. They're online from our meeting in February. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So approved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Well, welcome this evening. So we are going to have three presentations tonight. One is on engineering essentials, update from Mr. Benzing. Dr. Mazikowski is going to talk about elementary social studies and update, and something we all participated in, Read Across America, which was wonderful. So our mission and vision, something we talk about at all of our meetings, and certainly the role of the committee as well.
Are we getting pamphlets? Are we getting?
I'll get you lunch. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Benzing right now to do his engineering essentials update. Benzing.
Thanks so much, everyone. Good evening. I'm excited to share with you an output of all of our hard work in this past year, including the strategic plan. This is a brand new course for us at Strathaven High School, which ran this fall, as well as again this spring, our first Project Lead the Way course entitled Engineering Essentials. You see some pictures here of an opening week activity that our teachers implemented with the students. We've got about 63 students registered for the coursework, enrolled in the courses spread over 3 different sections, taught by 2 different teachers. A wide range of student population from 9th to 12th graders, mostly 9th graders. But an interesting mix all the way through of all different types of students. What you see here is an activity based on information systems. So the idea here is, and you can see kind of on the bottom right, a group that's presenting or sharing their systems they come up with, the means to communicate with the class. So the person in the front of the room is, and again, they came up with their own system here, is placing the item. All these people are mute, by the way. There's no communication verbally going on. You'll see this student here is signaling to this person, and this student is kind of carrying back and forth, trying to get placement for all these objects where they haven't seen before. That was new. They had to come up with some system that was variable enough, that changeable enough that they could place them as needed. And then at the end, the instructor says, "Yep, no, improve, make 1 adjustment, make 2 adjustments." So what was interesting is, as they kind of rolled this out, other groups started learning from the mistakes. So and I observed the whole lesson, was really fascinating. They realized that they needed a feedback loop. Like there was no way they were going to get it. So they needed to build into their design some operation for a check. Yes, no, up, down, left, right, that type of thing. Which is kind of interesting. One particular skill of many that we'd like to think that the course offers, and this is an identical slide to what we shared last spring when we were presenting the idea that we'd like to really roll out this practically. Some interesting things now that we've kind of lived it for a semester and a half was this idea of drafting and modeling. I think there's a lot more modeling that goes on in this course than anyone anticipated. We also think we've experienced a lot of nice benefit with our computer-aided design, our CAD systems. The idea that students through modeling have to generate some replica of what they're trying to create here on software, which is pretty interesting, I think, in that. Well, I'll show you in a moment here how that kind of shows up in person. But where did this start? Believe it or not, you'll see on the top right. This is one of Dr. Mercedes' favorite photos here in terms of the what we inherited. Kind of a giant, messy space, which in many design worlds is welcomed and invited. Not so when you're short on space. So you'll notice here, this door is open, but there's a similar door which we literally discovered when we removed all these filing cabinets and moved them outside. There's another door here. It was a great day.
It led to another world.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
The same world that this door led to, but we were still surprised nonetheless. And what that allows us is a pass through to what we kind of re-engineered everything as our hard workspace where the dusty and the dirt and the filth happen. And then this softer space where our computers and our general, and you'll see a picture of it, how that happens here. So design happens in one room. Hey, I need a drill. Hey, I need a piece of wood. Hey, I need a saw. I go through the doors and the other space, make it come back. There's glass here, so there's some passive observation with the teachers. It's a really nice discovery force. This used to be the space for our old auto lab. So you'll see we have some auto books here. We've got 100 gallons of worth of used motor oil we had to get rid of. That was fun. A gentleman bought some of our old welders. It was an interesting summer. I think it was Mr. Olay mentioned at the other school board meeting or this meeting said, whatever we can't use, can we please, recycle in some way? Did you say that? I'm trying to remember.
Probably, yeah.
Nonetheless, we launched off into that and we had all this metal everywhere. Which, for us to haul all there, we earned $7 or something. But, we just made a quick call out to the community and sure enough, people came and took this stuff away. It was, a fun summer. When you think a few times, Dr. Most guys came over and said, you need a shower.
You also stained your pants.
You told me to help you.
I told you to help me. She came in and walked right out the door. It was not a long visit. Dr. Rosay just applauded from afar. But this is the result of that. As you see it now, that same space, I'll go back real quick. Look at the right there. And now here we have this space. We have 6 maple butcher block high top engineering tables, 24 high stools, silver and black. We removed the projectors. This isn't here anymore. And the big smart board and just replaced it with a large 72-inch flat screen projector, which is kind of nice with the instruction just connects straight through it. This is beautiful to the eye. We purchased 4 i3 Prusa 3D printers. And these are, rapid manufacturing devices so that they're literally printed today. I brought them with me. You can pass them around all over the bed. These are some things here. Yeah, this is kind of fun. Yes, that's what I'm doing. Always getting instructions. I don't open this up. But these are some 3D prints that we had. I'll just hold it here for now. But these are fabulous. I had a ton of rewards and benefits from these units. This device here was generated in 20 minutes. So when you buy the rapid manufacturing units, it's kind of they can design it right then and there. Realize they need a part, code it on their tinker pad, upload it here, and it's done in 20 minutes. When they find out a block scheduling, we can have it implemented in real time. So super engaging for the students. My big fear when we purchase these was like we're gonna buy a bunch of little chess pieces. I'm gonna walk around and buy little trolls and medieval little crazy things. This is a waste of time and money. No, they have no desire to do that. They're literally solving problems. We have some videos. I'm getting excited. Watch out. This base is going to pick up a little. This wasn't cheap. You all didn't see that. These are some built-in custom cabinetry that we had put in. This stuff's expensive. Storage. When you're building, storage. We had no storage in this room. We noticed. When we started unpacking these project lead-the-way kits and these giant constructions, where are we going to put it? So that's the space. I invite anyone to come down and take a look. It's not as clean as this. This is the first day of school, but it's a happy mess now as opposed to what it was before. You'll see some projects here. There's a lot of presentations, right? So this was a project. The students needed to create a system, a lift system. They were engaged in. I'll pass this around. This is a part of that project where they had to design some stage change setup. I think the beauty of theater, right? They had where a new set would rise up from underneath the stage, and they had to design this whole piece. So this group here is presenting on that result. This group here on the top right is very proud of their output. And what you can't see here, but it will look better on the laptop and up there are 2. They're required to come up with a few iterations of this, right? This is the design. This is the paper layout that they initially tried one. I learned from it, try again, keep iterating the process. The design process is really a main focus for mine as we roll this out, K-12, these conversations. So interesting stuff here. Paul, would you mind helping me on this one and try to click on that? This is one of the, it's going to be beautiful. Yeah, just download that for me and then it'll come right up. I tell you what, go back up to there and I can kind of short through and then maybe you can freeze it on. Go back up to the slideshow for me, Paul, please. Yeah, great. And then freeze it on that. And then if you wouldn't mind just logging in, that way it can load up, if that makes sense. So if not, I can share it here. You'll see this is a ratchet system, right? Do you have the clicker there? Just freeze the screen if you don't mind. There you go, that'll work. Or go to your secondary. There you go. This is a ratchet system. And again, beautiful stuff. We didn't have that. That didn't come in the kit. But what happened was they needed that. They know they needed that, so they designed it. Right? The Tinkercad went over there, printed it out, slapped it on, and now they have a solution to their system. This is a little rough, they'll say, but they had to create that too. And that's how it starts, right? They realized it broke. I had to come up with a different lever, that kind of a thing. So we're gonna load it up, but you can see more or less how it works here. We'll come back. There's another video a little bit later. How we doing, Paul? Still trying?
You're at a good point now.
All right. Yeah, that's it. He's showing off, and if you have the volume, you can turn that up, that'd be great too, but if not, that's fine. He's showing off the whole ratchet system here and how it releases and rises up. Good stuff. His buddies are giving him a hard time behind him, see him laughing at him. Like, you're on the camera. Like, yeah, we know they're on the camera, but it's riveting. They really take pride in their designs. That's what I mean, and naturally so. You'd say that, of course they would. But like,
raise it up, and this mechanism pushes this thing out where it should be. It may take a little bit, but then
there it goes. And go back to the slideshow, please. Yeah, great. Unintended consequence of this 3D printing. I'm gonna pass these around now so you can. This is a basket. I have to get this back. This is the spring semester version. They're doing the same stage. I went over there today. I was like, you know, I got a board presentation. Give me some 3D stuff. So they have it everywhere. This literally I have to give back. So kid has to present tomorrow, 3rd block. It's part of the basket system to rise up. And they said, it doesn't matter. It's 20 minutes. We can print it again in 20 minutes. I was like, it'll be fine. So we'll pass that around so you can kind of see. And the quality of this is poor because it's in prototype mode. But the i3s make gorgeous, smooth, beautiful, smooth stuff if you want to see when the time comes. This, our robotics team, Team 46, who's competing on Saturday at Ben Salem in the regional tournament. They made it to the playoffs 2 weeks ago, and I don't know where I drove out. New Jersey was awful. Anyway, this one's in Ben Salem if you want to go. They needed to create a connector. They have 2 connections, 2 slim wires, but they kept coming undone last Friday, causing brownouts, so our robot kind of stuttered. So they realized we got to have some kind of connection. They connected to the engineering essentials class and said, can you make something that's good? Here they whipped it up. I'll keep it connected, but envision when you get it, 2 wires coming and connecting in here, and then this sandwiches together, keeping everything really safe and secure. This is beautiful. Dr. Mosikowski, I might turn this over to you. I was walking around West, and our teacher there, a special ed teacher, came to me and said, "You've got a bit of a problem. I've got some students that have some fine motor control issues. We're dancing, Paul. Fine motor control issues. In particular, the 10 frames, which maybe you have students go through here early in primary math understanding. Everything's base 10, right? How is 7? It's 3 less than 10. How is it? It's 2 more than 5. So there's a lot of references to base 10, but it's a 2D flat representation. A lot of times people draw on it, markers. Unifix cubes are used a lot, and this is where it comes in. With someone with fine motor control issues, it's tough to get the Unifix cube right on the 10 frame spot. 9 times, 7 times, 6 times. I hit it, all of a sudden everything's jostled. So they pushed this problem to that engineering essentials class, and they're right now trying to design some 3-dimensional 10 frame, right? At least this is their plan. You know, a flat base with raised sides, so the Unifix cubes can just plop in. So a real nice understanding benefit of this. Dr. Mosikowski, I'm going to ask you to talk about this because this is one of your reading programs. This is another problem, similar thing. Yeah, just briefly.
So when students are making words and they're combined, they're doing the blends. So for example, if you're looking at this slide here, you see on the green, A and G, A and K. So let's say you're starting with B or blank. You're building those words. So what Mr. Benzing is saying, now they can pick up those B and L and make the ending of the words and build those words.
So they're gonna create some type of, again, lift that can be grabbed more easily. There's 2 designs out right now, one with a hook and one with just a block, but we'll see what comes. But it's kind of neat. The word's spreading throughout the district and people are approaching us and saying, how can we solve these problems?
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. You can be wrong with it. It's hard plastic, should last. Now we got a big problem.
You know, we can print another one.
We can just print it.
20 minutes.
Just print another one.
Block schedule, 20
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah, they need that for the competition this weekend, so.
Well,
They got 3 days.
the students have requested that it be done in 5 minutes, which means this is why Mr. Bending has requested 5 additional machines.
Yeah.
As part of his strategic plan budget.
I do have to say, and no, the librarians at the elementary schools about when is this, the middle school, like, what's going on, how they have it, so get ready. One nice environmental, cultural, societal impact of the curriculum that again, we didn't see this one coming, was that every stage of this, they asked the students to consider the unintended impacts of their development, of their designs. Which is here's a brainstorming list of the results of drone deliveries, right? It's a neat advancement that happens in a lot of different, you've been hearing a lot of places. My brother has his pizza delivered, he lives down in North Carolina by drone. Thing comes and drops it right in the front yard.
Oh, wow.
But the curriculum forces the students to say, what are the unintended consequences of your development, of your design? Sit down and think about it before you make it, before you create it. Creating kind of a responsibility and ownership in their creation. So you'll see some things here. There's security concerns. Again, the frame here is the disadvantages or unintended consequences of drone delivery. Packaging materials causes pollution. I'm having a hard time reading. Safety concerns. One of these people have an interesting thing like, what does that say there? I can't even.
Drones crashing.
Drones crashing. That's right. They were worried about the drones crashing. What are the chances of that? So it's kind of interesting. That's an issue for them. Modeling. So this is. I'll give you a moment just to kind of read this modeling task to yourself. This is a task near the end of the course, and I mentioned this a little earlier. Another video a little bit later, Paul. If you want to freeze this and cue her up. My apologies. I should have filled you in on that. So here, they're gonna take those VEX components and try to come up with a solution for someone with a disability that needs to, some type of prosthesis for their arm. That's the task for these students. This is our first year in our engineering program. Pretty awesome stuff. So here's their design. This, here they are. This is what I mean by modeling, right? They have to take a look at different scaled representations of what they're trying to do. This is a special protractor. I call it protractor. They yell at me. It's not called a protractor. To try to get this measured. This gentleman, believe it or not, with a smug look, is really excited to show that he can hyperextend his elbow without pain. So it was really important to him that his creation actually, in fact, can hyperextend as his does, which is kind of interesting. This is one of those said creations. Paul, that's the one if you don't mind clicking on. We'll see if we can. The top right one. We might have you download it again, but I bet you, oh, no, we did it. Way to go. Love it.
Drawings and your.
Little floppy things is the fingers, hyperextension, the joint there, right here is in fact the elbow. So this is kind of the design of it. This is a beautiful little roller skid that they have here, working through. Final project. This falls into the category in the strategic plan for one of our intentional unit upgrades, which you've heard a lot about in Pathway 2. The final project for the Project Lead the Way course was a little underwhelming. It was more research-based, which isn't bad per se, but we've really kind of prided ourselves on creation, design, here's a problem, fix a problem. So it was fun a little bit by our instructors to talk about, and you may or may not remember the tornadoes that spun through Montgomery County. And for a long period of time, people there had no power. So the idea was, how could you generate a system at your home that would create light without gasoline, without a generator, without batteries, without anything. So the task was given in small groups, and this was one group's kind of creation. They had a bike. It's kind of the types of purchase orders that Dr. Connolly has had to approve this past semester were very interesting. Bicycle, a stand, a lift, all sorts of things. They purchased the bike. This creation right here was a 3D print. Again, they couldn't find exactly what they needed, so they had to design and print some type of spool that fits the exact contour of the bike. That makes sense? So the wheel spins. How is this making sense? Yeah, nice, right? The wheel spins, turns the spool. These here, what you see here are some motors, which power this multimeter, which in then converts and feeds these LEDs. So lights the way. It was interesting, you know, they have to, and they also learn a little bit about electricity, LEDs here. This purple one takes a lot of power to run, so they had to keep rotating on and off who was pedaling the bike, in that regard. So we're not gonna have any purple lights. Well, I guess that's one solution. But an interesting culminating experience for them in this regard. Yeah, very cool. I thought. You know, what's next? Where are we going from here? In this regard, you know, it was interesting because I really value student choice. These courses are elective. These are not required classes. So it's important to me to keep in mind, you know, what the students are asking for, what they're interested in. This is one set of feedback, which at initial read, I thought to myself, you know, that's kind of interesting. That's not what I hoped for, but I'll give you a chance just to read that to yourself. I'm not a big fan of reading slides to people. This sentence right here, I think, was initially struck me as, oh no, this isn't. Recently, though, I realized engineering isn't my passion. However, I think it's a good interest. Yeah, he's more into robotics, but engineering as a whole. Again, remember, this is a survey course. We're not going deep diving into just robotics. Other than environmental, electrical, mechanical. The goal is to give them a snapshot of everything. But I did note they did speak about how their classmates in different grades really pulled something different from each of the different activities that they had. And again, to me, one of my passions is design. The other is informal experiences leading to formal experiences. And you'll see here, this is a loaded question to try to get a sense as to what the element of design is. There are a lot of these courses through Project Lead the Way. We started with this introductory course here, Engineering Essentials. Why did we choose that one? It has the highest access. There's no math requirement. There's no age requirement. Anyone can have access to it. It was really important to us, especially for our first launch, not to have this really high level math barrier for people. So only juniors or seniors in calculus could take it. But all these other courses are available to us through the Project Lead the Way. Some of these we offer already internally. There's computer science and principles, this type of thing we already offer through the College Board at an AP level. But there are some interesting ones here. There's computer integrated manufacturing. That's more or less a robust robotics course, principles of engineering. So these are some things we have our eyes on for, not necessarily 24, 25, but possibly 25, 26. So we asked them, you know, which one would be of interest to you? And this idea of, these are just the descriptions of some of the ones I offered you, but civil engineering and architecture, which when I think about a Strath Haven kid, makes a lot of sense to me. They're very artistic, and yet at the same time, very skilled mathematically. It's a nice blend of those two things. We find. I told Dr. Connolly for over a year, like environmental science is where we need to go. Environmental and sustainability is super important for our community. That's going to be the one that comes out on top. And I think, you know, I still think that was important, but we have other avenues, I think, for our kids to explore that with the environmental science courses and things like that. So this is informative too. We're gonna have a repeat performance in the spring, keep collecting data, keep collecting student voice, hear how these things set them up for the future and make decisions with them. I think that's it. It seems to be it. Questions for you all?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for your presentation on how you're doing. Nanette, you have a question? With that?
No, not this time.
Not this time.
Thank you, that was great. My question was about the cross-section of students that enrolled in the course across gender and, students with IEPs and underrepresented groups. So I think you touched on it a little bit, but that was
yeah, I mean, I think this is again one of those scenarios where if you're intentional and deliberate, you can see really, great benefits from that. For our purposes, there's about in Wallingford-Swarthmore, I'm looking at my screen here, there's about 18% of Wallingford-Swarthmore school districts are characterized as special ed. About 13% of the students in engineering essentials class have the category of special ed. If you throw in 504s with special ed students, about 42% of the class made up of the special ed and 504. The proportion of Black and African American students in Wallingford-Swarthmore is about 8%, 11% in engineering essentials. So we hit a lot of targets, which we're really pleased with. There's one target we did not do very well in at all. I'm curious if you know what it is.
Gender.
Very true, very correct. And this is something that, quite frankly, as a father of two daughters, both of whom have a passion for math, and just generally a math and science enthusiast is something I started my career concerned about and working towards, and I'm positive I'll end my career working towards. And we still have work to do in that regard. There were 11 females in the course, about 20-ish%. But, you know, that's not terrible, but it's not where we want to be either, especially relative to the other demographic groups, which really, they're a nice representation. But we're working to that end and doing what we can.
I don't have any questions, but I'm blown away by this, truly, like, whereas social studies teacher, this is totally out of my comfort zone, and this is amazing, it's really impressive.
It's great. Thank you.
And I think you and I talked a little bit about the role of Project Lead the Way and the support it provides for teachers. How much are teachers getting from Project Lead the Way?
That's a great question. And you know, when you have a teacher force like we do in the district, that's very skilled and has a lot of experiences that they bring to the table. The idea for them of a canned curriculum, something which is scripted, is very difficult, I think, when they have such vast experiences to pull from. And in a lot of respects, that's our greatest strength, our greatest resource. So when I initially presented this to them, they were leery. They said, we can do this, we can design this, we can come up with this. And no doubt in my mind, could we, right? But we hear a lot about the drain that has long-term on teachers that have to come up with it all from scratch. So we want to give them tools. And in this case, you hear how they crafted this kind of as their own. And sometimes they pulled from multiple different places to create a final product which is greater than the initial intent. And I think that's what happened here with Project Lead the Way. If we had teachers that were comfortable flipping the page day to day and reading through a script, Project Lead the Way would do that. And it would be a solid experience for a lot of people. It gives them that much support. But when they were allowed to say, look, I want you to make this your own, that example where they had to generate power from Montgomery County, that made it local, that made it real. You know, that's what our teachers can do when they're allowed to pull from different resources. The sum of the parts is greater than the initial pull, for sure.
And then I think, just as a follow-up, you know, you're not gonna have this group of teachers and you forever. So are we doing anything to like codify this, set standards for these classes, make sure that there's a curriculum in place that, you know, I'm just going back as we talk into my head about some of the previous kind of shop, the things that we had that weren't particularly organized. And I just want to make sure that we are providing some standards and that teachers have expectations and that it looks great right now. And you've got enthusiastic people who love doing this and are doing a fantastic job. But I like to maintain that in some kind of organized fashion.
It's almost, Ms. Mikowski-Smith, as if you were on one of the strategic plan pathways. In fact, pathway 2, where we talked specifically about this, about coming, I mean, Dr. Connolly, this is his big push behind closed doors, but this is like, we need to get this down, we need to get everything you said, and we need to get this turned around and front facing for people. And I think, you know, for everything we create, there's a structure and a framework that we're populating on the back end here. That all can't happen on day one. We literally are in iteration 2 of this. But as we do it, I think it's important to that end. I mean, the teachers we have doing this, you're absolutely right. Mr. Thomas, what can I think of? Mr. Brown, they really invested a ton of time and a ton of training this past summer. They both went through over 40 hours of training each for this Project Lead the Way, which is a big investment, on, quite frankly, on the status of the board, which we're really thankful for. That they were able to hit the ground running in September, so they can do all these things that you're saying and generate that curriculum, a common experience, which is really important.
Well, and I will say the Project Lead the Way, and I've said this to Mr. Benzing, my teachers prior to me getting here, we spent a lot of time with Project Lead the Way, and it's wonderful. And I think the support that Andy talked about is real. And I think when you go back to the slide about what's our next pathway, over the years, it's really opened up more options for kids. The Project Lead the Way years ago was very prescriptive, right? You had to take this course, to then take these 2 courses. Now it's more open, and it's something Andy and I spent a lot of time talking about. So it provides so much support for teachers. It's wonderful. It absolutely is wonderful.
Oh, that sounds great.
So, when is this proposed to, is this going to be part of a curriculum? Like for engineering or math or science? Is it going to be a core course, not an elective?
Oh, those are two questions. The first is, I would say it's part of a growing engineering component that we have down there. And I mean, we've had components of engineering, but nothing to really tie together. For example, we had the computer animated design and drawing, the CAD classes. So kids would make these things theoretically out there, and that was great. They'd have a task and they'd make it. But now there's more motivation for that. We're hopeful to see an uptick in those CAD classes. So to answer your question, is it part of a program? We'd like to see that it fits nicely in this engineering and technology program that we currently have. They kind of feed each other. I'm really excited. I haven't told him this yet. Really excited about the idea of the connections this could have to our marketing course, some of our business classes. Envision, if you could, a business class coming up with a scheme, coming up with a plan, bringing it down to our engineering essentials group. They make that plan up for them, give it back, they prototype it, give it to the marketing class, who now has to turn around and sell that product. Like, boy, you can really get excited about where this is going all of a sudden. So is it a standalone? No, I like to think it's gonna fit into this ecosystem we're building. But it's year one, so this was not a small lift. I mean, I think we're seeing a 30-minute presentation here, but this has been going on for a year and a half, and it requires a lot of dedication. So we'll get there. I mean, that's part of our strategic plan. That's why we have this planned out over a long period of time.
Ms. Barkley, did you have a question?
Not any particular question. It looks so interesting. I really like it. I love what you just said about someday maybe being able to tie it to other parts of the curriculum. And hopefully in doing something like that too, we get more students who are interested in this. The only thing I was thinking about, when we were talking about the gender breakdown of the classes, and I was thinking about career day that we do in the middle school, and could we find some female, moms in our community who are in that space to talk to women about how cool this is and what those options are, but it's down the road.
Which we're not even, still years away from that, but
Well,
cross-content competency.
Yeah.
Really excited for your marketing project.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see the write-up.
we have to accelerate that one. We need another initiative.
Ms. Holbert, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I can't remember the timeline. Have students, asked for like their views for their classes for next year? And do you know what the interest is in this?
We're smack dab in the middle of that process. I mean, literally, we are having meetings, taking a look at numbers, looking at enrollments, tracking down the students that didn't fill all the forms in, these kinds of things until we get those set numbers. We're hopeful that now this was also the first year, so you have to think our net was all students 9 through 12.
Right.
Now we have a certain population, I forget how many the number was, 93, it's how many students that have kind of cycled through this. So our population is a little smaller than we're gonna pull from. So I'm anticipating kind of a drop back, maybe, I hope it doesn't drop to one section, but it dropped to maybe the 2 section. But I'm also anticipating those same students saying, where's the next one? I'd like to take another one of these. And we're at a kind of a saturation point right now. I think we're trying to design these things, but we have definitely our eye on 25, 26 to say, what could be the next one? What could that be?
So right now, there isn't a secondary course, like the students that went through this, I guess I want to say pilot, for lack of a better word, that's the end for them?
Well, it's not the end necessarily in terms of what it could take for engineering and design, but it's the end in terms of Project Lead the Way. As I said before, I'm hopeful we're going to see an uptick in 2 courses and for 3 courses, probably 2 courses in particular, for computer aided draft design or CAD courses. Also, we offer robotics course for students that have an interest in this tinkering and creation. There's another elective that they can take in robotics. So I'm hopeful that they're going to be, believe me, I don't want to leave anybody, off a cliff if they have interest in STEM. But again, I would love to have 3 of these next year, but we have to kind of balance time, energy, resources, and what's available to us.
Ms. Hubley, do you have any questions?
I do, just regarding the gender factor of it, because as we were looking at the photos, that also struck me.
Can I just ask you to, for the record, to say your name and the street?
I should know by now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mandy Hubley, 110 Cameron Drive in Wallingford. So I know that the gender point has been addressed, but I'm just wondering if photos from this presentation are shared with the students or anything like that. With regards to like, they may have seen these photos, and as a girl maybe internalized, I see a lot of boys and I don't see a whole lot of girls in these photos. Maybe this is not something I should look at for an elective, but I don't know how that all works with choosing electives and stuff like that, so.
Sure,
It was just a
thank you.
question I had, if the photos were shared with any other audience other than right here.
At this stage, the intent of these photos is to try to give this group a good sense as to what the course is going.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. I did have one, I hijacked a slide, which might get me in trouble tomorrow, but I'm gonna hope for the best. And that is, last month, I spoke about the math vertical team and the work they had, and one of the requests was, when can we get a look at this? When can we get a peek? But we were just able to kind of block down, some dates. So we're gonna have a bit of a traveling road show this spring, to different areas. And these are all tied to, with the exception of SRS, the home and school meetings. So I've asked the principals just to be a bullet on those home and school meetings where I'm gonna be there kind of explaining that process as I did to you last month. And then I'm gonna hang around after the meeting in case anyone wants to stick around and do some math with me, which I'm hopeful everyone will. But this is gonna be pushed out through principal blasts. My wonderful assistant, who's much more creative than I, this is what my flyer would look like. It's much more creative than I, is coming up with a flyer that we're gonna push out and post, and you'll see on our website. So folks that have an interest in those new math programs or want to get hands-on and touch and feel for them, the month of April is the time to do that. And there's always a fifth option on there, just to send me an email or a call, and I'll be happy to kind of go through these individuals. Oh, that's all right, I threw that in there. Sure. We got a blank one?
Yeah, now you also do blind one.
That back up.
Sure.
Black one. Put it there.
Yes, this is. Think we're ready to pass it over then to hear about elementary school.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I am going to give an update on the elementary social studies progress that we've done so far. And some of what you're going to hear is what you heard at the Ed Affairs Committee meeting in September. Thank you. We started off with creating a vertical team, which is a group of teachers from grades K through 5. We have a total of 13 teachers working as a vertical team. And we've been together quite a while because we started off a couple years ago, and then time was a factor. We did not meet as often as we had intended on doing. We also did the curriculum audit and the equity audit, and we wanted to use some of that to guide our work. And now we are at a point where we have been meeting regularly. But starting off, we really wanted to come together as a group and establish what would guide our work. And to start off with, we wanted literacy to be at the core of what we do in social studies. Because if you are not reading, social studies asks you to read a lot because it does have a lot of informational text. So we knew that we had to strengthen our reading instruction to be able to do social studies. We also wanted a scope and sequence that is based on the PA core standards, which is what tells us what to teach, when to teach, and at what grade level to teach it. To have a cohesive learning progression, meaning what students need to learn by the end of each grade level so that they're ready for their next grade level. We wanted the content to be relevant and current, tied to cultural proficiency, so students could see themselves, see the world, and be exposed and aware of what is going on around them, and be aware of who they are before, as well as who others are. And be able to learn skills that are transferable. But one of the big things that, and I kept that for last but by no means is it the least, is time. Because when we look at social studies at the elementary level, we are doing 2, maybe 30 minutes every 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week. Social studies is not a 90-minute block. Social studies is not like ELA or math where you have that much time, which is why it has to be woven into literacy. It has to be woven in science so that you are using content that you are learning in other content, in other subject areas to reinforce what you're learning in social studies. And it also works the other way. You use the ELA block because social studies gives you that background knowledge that you need to build on literacy skills, which is one of the ELA standards. So we speak a lot about scope and sequence when we're talking about our virtual team, when we talk about building curriculum. A scope and sequence is really the breadth of the work that we do, which is the content that is targeted to instruction. What do we want to teach? It is defined by the state standards, and it essentially means what will be taught and what will students learn. It is also the progression of the work. What is the logical order that the content will be taught? It can be chronological. It can go from simplistic to more complex. But that's what a scope and sequence is. And if you look at the little graphic on the side, the scope and sequence will lead you to the unit plan, which then leads you to the lesson. And I'm giving you an example of a scope and sequence that is standards based if you're looking at an ELA standard. So if you're starting with foundational skills, which is how students learn how to read the alphabet and how to write the alphabet and what sound do they make. So that big overarching standard is then broken down into a cohesive level so that it makes a progression. So that's what the scope and sequence will be built on. And that's just an example. Again, this is some of the information that I shared at this September EdFest committee meeting. There are 4 big standards overarching in social studies: civics and government, economics, geography, and history. The work that we've done so far is, number one, we needed to identify what were the power standards at each grade level. Power standards are what are the critical skills and content that students need to learn at each grade level. Because as you can see from the previous slide, there are many standards. And some of them overlap. So you're not going to hone in and delve deep into each one of these standards. You need to identify the one that is actually going to guide the work, that are the critical ones that is essential for students to master so they can be considered proficient and they can move on to the next grade level. We also did a lot of work to see where do these standards overlap? Where do they overlap in other content areas and also across grade level? Do they happen consistently in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, or are there grade levels where they do not happen? And if there are gaps, what does that mean? What do we do with these gaps? How do we fill in these gaps? I showed this at the previous meeting in September, and this room was covered with these chart papers where we started highlighting, at what grade level do these standards happen? And if you look in yellow, these standards recur at each of these grade levels. If it's in green, there is a gap. So from there, we cleaned this all up. Now, we have built for each of these standards, civics and government, geography, and the other 2, we've aligned those standards from kindergarten to 5th grade. And this is an example of civics and government. And there is cohesion, they're aligned. We know where they're happening in kindergarten, where they're happening in 1st grade. This is another example for economics, and we did the same thing. So an update on where we did, we cleaned up all the chart paper, and now it's lined up in a clean document.
It was messy for a while.
It was messy for a while. So at the last meeting where I left off is the next step, other than cleaning this up, is naming the units of study. Naming the units of studies is another critical step in this process of building a scope and sequence, because each of these standards get put under an overarching theme. That's what a unit of study is. It's an overarching theme, it's a topic that organizes the skills and content that the students are going to learn within that grade level. So, and remember, in social studies, we start with learning about self, learning about family and community, learning about the world around us, and then the bigger world. There's a logical progression in social studies. And if you look at the naming of the units that the team has decided upon, kindergarten is family and school, first grade is school and community, second grade is community and citizenship, fourth grade is statehood and country, and fifth grade is country and culture. So again, there is a progression in how they're expanding their awareness of the world around them. As we continue this work, we will continue our collaboration with the learning specialists we work with at the IU. We are actively working with teams of teachers and recruiting more teachers to write these units of studies and to tie assessment to the units of study. And to look at what are these power standards, these priority standards, and how they are distributed across more than one unit of study, so that students are exposed to in more ways than one, to the skills that they need to learn. So when we are designing units of study, what are we really doing? We are identifying, naming the unit of study. We figure out what time frame are we going to teach these skills? How are they aligned to the standards? What skills that will be taught? What are the learning outcomes? What will students learn? What assessments we will use? And also what resources will be used to support instruction. This is an example of a unit of study that has been, and some of you will recognize this, for fourth grade. The overarching theme is statehood and country. The time frame, January, February. The unit title is people throughout history. The standard is history. And underneath it, you can see the standards that are being targeted, which identify the skills that are being taught through that unit. And the learning outcome is what will students learn? They will learn about essential people throughout history and their contributions to society. And what is the summative assessment? The Wax Museum project. And there's some pictures here that show you the Wax Museum. And we do this every year in our buildings. And the resources are Introduction to Wax Museum, which are teacher-created materials, and the rubric for the Wax Museum, which are also teacher-created. And they've used research, they've looked at other materials and resources, they've looked at what is available they do virtual visits of museums, and so they can build this rubric. And it's typically an event that we invite parents to attend. Some of you may have attended it. We go and we see, we also go and see the students. So this is an example of how we would design a unit of study. So for us, again, building the sequence for social studies and continuing this work, it is grounded in the audit findings, because we know, we got our marching orders from the audit, which clearly says that we did not have clear scope and sequence. We do not have a clear articulation of curriculum that can guide teacher instruction. So we want to make sure that we have a scope and sequence. That's why we're spending so much time building this so that it meets the needs of our students, is current and relevant. We know that we will need resources to support this instruction, some of which already exist, some of which is already being used by our teachers, and we want it to look the same across the 3 buildings. And we also want to make sure that there is a project-based learning connection, in the sense that it is cross-curricular, that the assessment or the product that the students are going to give is not necessarily paper and pencil or multiple choice or an essay. They can do a wax museum, they can do a project, they can work from social studies, maybe science and ELA, to build something that is across content areas. And that's an update on where we are with social studies.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Ms. Wexler, do you have any questions? Not at this time.
Mr. Lake? I mean, I don't really know if this was a focus of this particular, presentation, but I'm curious to know how literacy does fit into, our social studies model. And I think about, differentiation and different, reading abilities, obviously, but again, that's probably not the focus of this.
No, I mean, literacy is an integral part of social studies. It helps build the background knowledge that students need, because one of the components of literacy is building background knowledge. And it's one of the standards, it's one of the things that we are looking for. So choosing the content that students are reading in social studies, or what we are reading in ELA to support the skills that are being taught in social studies, work together. So if we have decodable texts that we have that are informational, that students are learning about the world themselves, or that would play a part into literacy. But to tell you the truth, if with social studies, if you are not, it is reading to learn. You are reading because you have to learn, so that it all ties together.
And then I suppose any differentiation that's happening, say, in the ELA block is also happening.
It's happening. It would, and time is a big factor with social studies, because it's not built in our schedule 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day. We share that block with science also.
Thank you.
So well, first I'll say I have noticed throughout the years the lack of a cohesive social studies curriculum. And thankfully, again, the teachers of this district are amazing, and they have been doing the brunt of this on their backs. So I think this is totally a step in the right direction. I just have a couple questions about the design of it, and like as you're kind of coming up with the plan for this year, you mentioned, I think, 13 teachers.
For the vertical
For the
team.
vertical team?
Yes.
So my question would be, like who's making these decisions? How were they kind of selected? Was it open to anyone? Were they receptive? Are they given adequate time? Is that one of the reasons maybe not as many wanted to do it? I don't know, I guess kind of like that kind of stream of this where I'm going.
So typically, the vertical team, we open it up to every teacher. We say, we have several vertical teams going on at the same time. So, typically you will not have as many. We kind of fight over like who is going to be running a vertical team, because we do have to share teachers. And so I started with some teachers are more passionate about social studies, some teachers are more passionate about math, some teachers are more passionate about ELA, and we do ask them to do a lot. When I came to the district 3 years ago, we did not have a scope and sequence in social studies at all. The 3 buildings were doing 3 different things at different times of the year. There was no cohesion at all. In addition to building the ELA, which was also in that same situation, I was also tasked with working with social studies. And building it, to make it number 1, cohesive, and number 2, so that we have the same access. We are giving the same access to students across the 3 buildings. The wax museums could be happening at SRS, but not at NPE, not at West. Field trips could be happening at NPE, but not at West and not at, it was not, and it's still not totally, cohesive. We're building it. But this framework did not exist at all. So building a vertical team, asking teachers to serve on the vertical team, be representative of their school and grade level. So we make sure on each vertical team that there's a representative of the grade level from each building on that vertical team. We ask that at grade level team meetings, which happen every month, that the team shares where the progress of the work is. And on PD days, we also share when it's built into the PD day, what the work is, where we are at, and what feedback we can give. So none of these decisions are made in a vacuum or just by these 13 teachers. It is a joint decision. And when we get feedback, to tell you, a lot of teachers are just waiting for the scope and sequence to be built so that they can, they have something in hand that is, okay, now we have this, and every scope and sequence that we build, we know is going to be revisited and revised and reviewed. It's not a one and done, because we want it to be kind of relevant. We want it to be work that teachers own. And one of the things with teachers in this district, they do own the work. They want to do it, which means they come up with these ideas. So this is that's the design of it.
That's true. And I guess then the expectation would be that this is going to be mandated that they
Yes.
use starting next year.
Once we have the whole,
Yeah.
the assessment, the resources, and it's board approved, yes. And the other question you asked is about time. So we have been creating time during the day, and if you're part of vertical team, it's a supplemental. So we do it combined. Sometimes we do have time during the day to pull the team together. Then they do work on their own. They turn in a time sheet and share with colleagues. But all of this is part of the design of the vertical team.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I know that, creating these standards across 3 buildings and moving so that we have standards, identified power standards and alignment in all 3 buildings. I mean, the goal is to get to 6th grade and then have students come with the same experiences. So I think that is terrific. My question is also in the area of time. And I mean, if a period is being shared with science, and even just looking at the power standards, I don't know how to get it all done.
You're right. Which is why we have to identify those power standards, those critical, essential skills that become the non-negotiable. And also, we have responsive classroom during the day. We have PBIS lessons. Some of the skills that are in social studies happen in responsive classroom, happen in PBIS lessons. They are not necessary, they are skills, soft skills that students need to learn. So they happen throughout the day in other content areas.
Right. Yes, thank you. I worry about our teachers.
I'm concerned about the students, and especially students that lag behind. To only give 30 minutes to a social studies course and then have all of these standards that have to be met to proceed to the next level. Like, how does that work? How do you not leave a child behind?
This ties to the question that Ms. Gaskett-Smith asked. So the time, we know that we have 30 minutes, about 30 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week with social studies. So social studies is not our ELA block, English Language Arts, our math blocks are the longest blocks during the day, because this is where students are learning to read, students are learning to write, and students are learning to add, subtract, and do math. Because these are the core skills that you're learning. These are the foundational skills that students are learning at the elementary level. Social studies, now that is lesser important, the content of what you're learning in social studies is also covered throughout the day in other areas of the day, as in responsive classroom, PBIS lesson, ELA content, science content. There are other places where what students would be learning in social studies will overlaps during the day.
That's what's that. I was gonna say, my daughter's in 4th grade and she just got done doing a wax museum. And so in reading, they were reading biographies about their person, for example. So like that was kind of cross curricular to the reading and the living wax museum all tied in together.
Okay, but then what happens to the standards that need to be, like, isn't there certain books that are assigned to grade levels that are mandatory that they read, that's no longer a thing in Pennsylvania? Like, as far, you know, each, like, you have, like, in sixth grade, we had to read Catcher in the Rye. Like, that was
In
the
ELA,
standard.
in
Yeah.
English class.
Yeah.
Yes,
So if you had a wax museum project and then you say you're gonna read about the person that you're gonna present on the wax museum, now you have the students being required to read two separate books from two separate genres.
okay.
Isn't that a
So
lot
is it
to
too
put on
much
a
the
student?
They do it in the classroom, they do it with help, if students are identified as needing help or special needs students, the content is differentiated for them, the assessment is differentiated for them. What they are asked to read, what they are asked to produce after reading is also modified for the student.
So you can have modifications in what the wax museum project is
They do, yes,
for
For they-
different
that would
students.
have- Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Yep. Product, process, it's all differentiated.
Okay,
Did I answer your question?
yes.
Okay, great.
Ms. Walkman?
No question, thank you.
I was just wondering about, instead of time, the timeline for moving this in. You said that there was some steps. What do you envision?
So right now, we're at the point where we are creating those, units. And we are pulling teachers together after school, during the day sometimes. We are anticipating by May to have a clear, at least for the unit designs created and done. We're not going to, as a vertical team, we're not creating lesson plans, like that's not part of what we do. But having the units, having the scope and sequence and the units attached to it and being able to give that to our teachers. But before we do that, we do have to make sure that we have the resources necessary to support them and the professional development that goes with.
That gets back to.
So the
what
timeline
we need from the school, from us. In terms of resources, like, is there anything you could come back to? us
Yes,
and-
we are going to come back to you and say what are the resources that we need, which is while we're building the units, we are also identifying the resources. And some of the resources are field trips, some of the resources are bringing speakers in, or it's not, some are subscription to magazines that are about current events, depending on the grade level.
Was that Newsella, was that part?
Newsella is not part of,
Not-
it's
not
not
part of that,
secondary, but
Okay.
we will be looking at products that are similar to
Right,
that.
that's,
Yes,
because that's a really good one.
yes. And that's building differentiation in Newsella.
Right,
And we're gonna talk about New Zealand next month.
okay, I knew
It's
that
on
was
our-
on the
It's on our
agenda.
list.
Yep,
Okay.
okay, sorry.
Ms. Hubley, do you want to again state your name and street? Thank you.
Nancy Usually Cameron Giles from Wallingford. And my question is to the point of the teachers, once this is all created, to the point of actual lessons and implementation of the units of study, what's the expectation going to be for the individual teacher on actually instructing the student?
To use the units of study, to use the
Correct.
scope and sequence in the classroom.
Correct, so for
Within the time.
lessons, is there, I know you were talking about Newsella, but just so that we don't then get back into every teacher has a different interpretation of each unit of study, right? Which is very feasible to happen per grade, per building. You say, okay, here's this text that I want you to read, or here's this speaker I want you to hear from. Each teacher could craft a wildly different lesson for all aspects of a unit of study and still address the standards. So how is the district going to ensure equitable instruction within each of the units?
So typically, we build our lesson plans by grade level within the classroom, within the building, and we have grade level team meetings where we share our lesson plans of what we are teaching. This is what is happening right now in the absence of a formalized official scope and sequence. At each grade level meeting, we know what is coming up, we build it together. So as much as there is flexibility for each teacher, because we do allow for flexibility for teachers to be able to have that agency, we also use our grade level meeting time, which is once a week, for teachers to get together at the building level and at the district level to work through what is the next unit, what is the unit going to be and what is the lesson going to be. And so that when we are going from classroom to classroom, we see the cohesiveness, we see the echoing from classroom to classroom within that grade level. So there is an ongoing, there is a system, there is a structure in this district that we have implemented in the last 3 years where we have grade level meetings. That Mr. Bending and I meet with grade level chairs every month, and grade level chairs meet with their team regularly. So there is a flow in that sense, and that's the task at the grade level, at the grade level meetings, to talk about instruction, to talk about what we are teaching, that's where the conversation comes up with, oh, I found this resource, let's put it through the team to see where we can use it, where we can add it. And we do this in math, we do this in ELA, we do this in science, we do this in business.
And I might just add in, really, I haven't heard all here, but the general principle that I think you mentioned, the idea of if people approach this from different angles, still covering the same standards, is that equitable or not? I think when we give our teachers a little bit of room to do that, as long as those standards are met, when they bring all of those experiences back to the grade level team, the end product is greater yet. The similar thing happens in that engineering essential course. So it's always a balance, right? If we let completely hands off, do whatever we want, well, that's kind of why we are where we are. But with the standards that we have laid out here, when we focus on that, the end result actually can be greater than if I said to all of them, like I think some people surmise that everyone's gonna teach this lesson this way, that way is that way. You limit creativity there, there's a loss there.
And we also have different students in different classrooms that we do need to have the flexibility to adapt our instruction. And what the final product of what we're teaching is for the different students that we're teaching in front of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My worry is kind of the idea of the teacher pay teacher classroom.
Oh, no.
Right,
Yeah.
and how if you're given this standard and they're so vague in general, that, you know, depending on the particular standard, they're so vague in general that it could be interpreted in, okay, well, I'm gonna print out this worksheet and we're gonna say, yeah, it does address this standard, but to the point of differentiation, a third of the class can't read what this worksheet is asking them to do or can't put it into their words. I think that's where my worry comes in, is just the possibility, right? And I know that it's never going to be 100% in any school or any district, but just the possibility of working from a unit of study, without a specific lesson or specific text that is really laid out. And I know you said the resources will be presented, so I'll be excited to kind of hear what those resources are, but just the idea of like willy-nilly, right?
Well, that you're describing, public education, from the word go, right? This idea
That's
that
scary,
it's historical fact. With
but
regards to.
not our expectation.
No, I'm not saying it's our expectation, but the way you're describing the idea that how do we create continuity and consistency has
Right.
been the challenge with American education system, hence the demographic disparities that we are seeing across the country and have seen since the schoolhouse, right? Which is the balance between the art and science of teaching. To Mr. Benzing's point, where we respect autonomy and flexibility, but there has to be structure and continuity and to the extent in which our students across the board getting essentially the core essentials within that learning experience. How do you augment that for those students who are along the spectrum, whether they're students who have specific needs or those students who they don't really need you in the room anyway, they're hyper accelerated with that process. What we are trying to articulate, and sometimes in my experience with educators, is this idea that I'm an artist, I want fluidity, I don't like to be hamstrung or handcuffed to this. Oftentimes, you hear a scope and sequence in the curriculum, people think you're putting them in a box. No one likes a script. What we're trying to say is, we're not trying to put you in a box. We're not trying to write down every script. We respect your professionalism. However, there are elements of this that are a science versus the art. And we just want to make sure there's continuity and consistency. What that means, the written curriculum is extremely important, right? But also the support, and if I dare say, the monitoring and the accountability, which oftentimes people see that as a bad word. I never saw monitoring or accountability as a bad word when I was a classroom teacher. It's the culture in which you created where individuals feel they're supported and welcome to receive feedback. So part of our role is to leverage the expertise of individuals in this profession, provide them with the space to create that autonomy, but understand that we have a structure in which we want to operate from, create the collaborative spaces, whether they're team meetings, whether they're professional learning communities at the secondary level, and have, whether we don't have them here, whether they're instructional coaches who are monitoring and supporting that, whether it is principals who are designated as the lead instructional person in your building, and then collaborating with directors to ensure that we're on the same page. And though I may love Mr. Benzing's enthusiasm for STEM or engineering, you may be going off a little bit too far to the left, because this is not in line with some of the experiences that we're getting. So it is a constant push and pull in providing individuals with a framework, which is what we want to do. And when you have individuals who may have not had that, they see that as you're boxing them in. And I try to be clear with individuals where I come into places where I'm like, well, you need to have a scope and sequence. You have to have a unit study, you have to have some structure. I dare to say there needs to be lesson plans that are aligned. I believe that there also needs to be ways in which we assess they are aligned. I can't be down the hallway with you and you're teaching something vastly different than my classroom, or you're grading them very differently, even though we have differentiated assessments. But if you're walking in, you're telling students, and I'm thinking about this at the secondary level, we know we're talking about elementary, where, well, 75% of your grade is attributed to a pencil and paper exam. And right down the hallway, we have a Mr. Benzing who says, well, I'm really interested in what you can produce, how you can link it to interdisciplinary concept. Show me something that lets me understand, right? Different ways of assessing, both are valuable, but sometimes if you don't marry those two, that's when you have, I don't want to say too much autonomy, but like, what was the word, what was it, nilly-willy? Well, like, there was an expression, and I'm like, yeah, you can't have that in terms of that. And I think when you do have that, that exasperates the inequitable outcomes that we continue to see. So we respect the autonomy, trying to figure out how we put a structure into place. How do we monitor that? How do we create space for educators to talk to each other about what they're doing with that? And how do we make sure that we are getting, administrators inside the classroom, not to oversee them, right? Because the audit, was very clear. The audit, stated for the educators who participated in the survey in the audit, our building principals are not afforded the time to come into the classrooms the way in which we would, right? And since the primary role of this district is teaching and learning, right? We gotta build pools, we gotta fix locker rooms, we gotta do that, that's important, but that's our primary focus. Which means that you need people to make sure that their dedicated time is inside the classroom. So you have to provide, but then you have to provide those individuals who are designated to go inside the classroom to have the appropriate skill sets to be able to speak to what they saw and how to give good feedback to that expert in the room, which is that classroom teacher. But that, as I was listening to your questions, I'm like, oh yeah, that's been the $1 million question in education, is how do we create the space where there is autonomy, but there has to be structure so that Andy, who loves 18th century literature, doesn't spend the next 15 weeks on that topic and bypassing all the other standards. So we're trying to make sure that we balance that as much as possible. But we also know that you need individuals inside those instructional spaces. And matter of fact, the audit, our teachers willingly ask for, we need to see more people inside our classrooms. We appreciate the opportunity to receive that feedback. So I think through some of the things that were described here, with how we get inside the classrooms, how we collaborate, how we create collaborative spaces. One of the other things, and I'll stop talking, in the audit, which is why we're doing PLCs and why we're thinking about our professional development, where teachers have said, hey, there's a lot of stuff that you're throwing at us, but we really need more time for us to sit down together as a group and kind of push and pull against each other. I want to know what Andy's doing in his classroom and what is really working, and how is he differentiating for Wagner? Because I have a Wagner in my classroom, and it seems like this is working, and I haven't been able to find that formula. So we're trying to be attentive to those asks as well. So it is a constant where I don't want to say that you will never arrive, but you're constantly pushing the envelope and making sure that that happens. Yeah.
And to your point as well, is there a common summative assessment for each unit? Yeah,
Yes.
so like that will also help with that as well. Yeah.
I thought, I understood this, the audit to mean that within the elementary school, we have 3 elementary schools. So you have 2 teachers in each school teaching ELA, but they're doing it differently between the schools. So the themes don't match up between there's no continuity between the schools. And I thought that was a deficit that the audit picked up that made it willy-nilly, that there was no continuity between grades, the same grade in the same grade level at the same elementary school, that because of autonomy and this free expression, that teachers were teaching their own style and maybe not addressing standards, missing standards because they don't know the standards, because they haven't been, it hasn't been refreshed since they went to college, or through personal development being kept abreast of what they are. So
You're right, the audits say that there is lack of cohesion. There was lack of cohesion among the 3 buildings.
so this is what you did with this.
When I came here 3 years ago, yes, 4 years ago, the 3 buildings operated independently. They were entities of their own, they were, what one building was doing was not necessarily what another building was doing in terms of content, timeline, activities, projects, field trips, it was not. We are now at a point where there is more cohesion. 100%, I can't say that it is at 100% yet. Do I want it to be at 100%? Am I working for it to be at 100%? Yes. What is true now is that we have grade level chairs at each grade level that meet with teachers at each building. We have team meetings that bring buildings together, but that also bring the 3 buildings together. I go to each of these 3 buildings. I go to 5 buildings, but I make sure that I go to all 3 buildings. When I meet with the principals, I meet with all 3 principals. When there is an activity or an assembly or anything that comes to our attention that is happening in one building, we typically ask the question, well, how can we make it happen in the 2 other buildings? We have reading specialists in each of the buildings. I meet with my reading specialist team from all 3 buildings very regularly. So whatever is happening in one building, we make sure that it is also happening in the other 2 buildings. Now, the 3 buildings also have very unique needs in some ways. They're not all the same. So you can't, equitable is not equal, right? So you have to address the students' needs, the building needs, parents' needs, the community needs. But the experiences that we are creating, that we are in control of, we want to make sure that these experiences are accessible to all the students across the district.
Okay.
So yes, I will say that 4 years ago, there was no cohesion at all. I'll transition to, because this.
I'll get us going.
Okay, thank you. This, so the last week in February, we had Read Across America in our school district. When I came here 4 years ago, it was during COVID year. And soon after, when we were doing Read Across America, again, it was done in their own unique way in each building. And definitely we recognized and celebrated Read Across America, but each building did it their same way. So Read Across America has existed for a long, long time. And we have typically the National Education Association sends out a reminder to all educators that, Read Across America is about to happen. Dr. Marcet talked about it a little bit at the board meeting on Monday night. We get titles, we get resources through the National Education Association. At WSSD, with the reading specialist, when we met, we started planning Read Across America couple months ago, a couple months before the actual date. And we decided that we are going to, or our goal is to have students travel the nation to picture book, read aloud. And this happened the same way in all 3 buildings. There were bookmarks that were placed in teachers' mailboxes that would allow students to then read, color a region of the book that they read in the classroom. And there was kind of like a friendly competition with an interactive bulletin board that reading specialists created in each of the buildings that looked the same. And if that classroom had read the books from each region, they would put a flag at the finish line. So it was kind of friendly competition of which classroom would have read all the books. The theme, last year, the theme was Lift Every Voice and Read, and we liked the theme, so we kept the same theme this year. This is a sample of some books that we had from each of the region, West, Midwest, Southwest, Southeast, and Northeast. This is just a sample. We had many more books than this. So these were some of the books that the teachers would read aloud in the classroom. And if you had read that book and it was from that region, yeah, you can go put your little flag. And many of these books also come as on YouTube. so you could listen to them. So if a student would listen to the book and also read along, they had the opportunity to do that. The other thing we did as a team is every day of the week, students could dress up, and it's tied to reading, of course. So Monday, workout attire, reading jogs the mind. I went to a building on a day and I was wearing green and it was pink day. They were like, why are you wearing? The students were looking at me like, why are you in green? I'm like, I completely forgot it. I'm the one who puts this together. So, but every day we would go to the building and we would see the different outfits. And the other thing that used to happen in one building and not in every building was pause for people. And this is a super hit. I look forward to this. I will go specifically to just see the dogs and play with the dogs. And we can really play with them, but read to them. And these are several pictures. I know Dr. Marcel went and sat with the dog.
And I'm scared of dogs. I see me playing with them.
But the dog came right up to you.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm scared of dogs.
You guys, he's walking the bus,
Yeah,
the dog came right up
what
to
I do.
him.
What did I?
And I'm like, I'm
Check my pocket.
and you should see, I mean, just the atmosphere in the classroom when the dog was laying there and they were reading to the dog. It was
a big dog.
yes, so, and it
They're so adorable.
It's like a pink horse.
and if a student was allergic to the dog, we would FaceTime the student from the hallway so that they would be a part of the reading with their classroom.
Oh, you gotta make sure they bring poodles in.
Well, we can't pick our dogs, it's what the therapy company has, but I would tell you that these dogs are really amazing. Amazing with the students, and you know, just reading, then the students would tell us, oh, I'm going home tonight and reading to my dog, to my cat, to my, or my pet dog, my teddy bear. It's really, I hate it. So one of the things that we do is, we have guest readers, mystery readers, and something we call Dear, which is and read. So our guest readers are our district administrators. We put in, I put out a Google sheet and times where teachers, where administrators go and read. Dr. Conley,
Is
Mr.
that Dr.
Benzie.
Conley?
Yes, ma'am. I love it.
What, at the top?
No, in the middle there.
Oh, that's
where
good,
The students are so
Oh, that
engaged
was tough.
on the edge of their seats. Super fly guy, they're on the edge of their seats.
So, and guest readers can bring, guest readers can bring a book of their choice, or when they go to the building, the teacher will give them a book, there's a selection of books. Mystery readers can be anybody, from parents, grandparents, retired teachers. Students don't typically know who the mystery readers are, so a grandparent can show up and it's like, oh, it's just arranged through, so that's interesting. And drop everything and read is really cool. This is the first time I've experienced it in this school district. I didn't have it anywhere else. There would be an announcement made at any time during the day by the building principal, and wherever you are, so if you look at the pictures in the hallway, wherever you are, Dr. Savage, Dr. Tubb, Mr. Hindley will say, drop everything and read. They'll play music, and everybody, teachers, everybody who's around, and students will just stop and take out whatever they're reading. They read to each other, they can read to themselves, but everybody drops and reads.
So I was in Wes, about to start reading, when over the loudspeaker, the principal said, all right, everyone, drop everything you read, and the kids went, we have a guest, the teacher was great, we'll do that later, let Dr. Conley read the book. I was like, no, I don't know what to do, so it was great. As soon as I finished reading, the kids all had their books, the teacher, and they opened it up, and I thought, this would be unbelievable every day if we had drop everything and read at work, right? And take a minute away from our computers and pull out the text that we're reading, it would be wonderful. So it was so rewarding.
So the reason we really put a lot of effort, energy, time, and space into Read Across America. It is a celebration of reading, and clearly literacy is very important to us. We really like the theme, lift every voice and read. We believe that we're going to keep it, and Dr. Marcel has told me that he would like to explore a way of doing like a whole elementary read in one way or the other. So I have brought that to the team, and now we're trying to see under what umbrella we can bring that. I'm also going to give him credit for the guest readers, because when he was like, he was to read in a classroom the one day, and then he's like, I think every single administrator should be reading. So I'll give him credit for that too. That's part of, he had a still, which was rewarding. Well, just having students being read to, children like to be read to. Even if they tell you they don't, like, children love to be read to, and they love to read to others. They do. And one of the things that which happens unintentionally through the guest readers and the mystery readers, is when you're picking a book and you're starting to talk about a book, you typically say, I read this book with my daughter, or I really love this author, or I read this book when I was this age. You talk about the book that you read. And that's what we want our students to do. This is one of the strategies that we are actually teaching students in the classroom. Talk about what you're reading. What are you learning? What did you find interesting about this author? And when we share our experiences with reading, we are actually modeling what we want teachers to be doing, what teachers are actually doing in the classroom. So that echoes in with us as educators a lot. And students start learning about other authors too. When you bring in new stories, they go home, they want to read more about it, they become curious about it. And invariably, I will tell you, if you've been a guest reader in any one of these classrooms, there will be a conversation that will be started with one of the students, or somebody will say to you, you know, I read this book, or I saw this movie. And this connects us to the first four, which we do every year at the beginning of the year, which is to get to know our students on a personal level, to make these connections. So it is very important for us to do Read Across America. And like you, Dr. Conley, I would like it to happen when I'm see it.
And as Dr. Maskowski said, the one thing that happens, I have 3 sons, right? And they're older now, but you talk about your own experience with the book, and then the students say, how many kids do you have? And where do they go to school? And what do they do? And tell me about your son. And it's just a way to really engage with the students. It was, and the neat thing is for me, going into some of the rooms, they invited me back. So I got back to the office and I said to Mrs. Feely, okay, we got a schedule to get back in there at such a time. And the students now said, when you pick the books, then we're gonna pick the books for you. And I said, that's really exciting. So it was a really cool process as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Maskowski.
Thank you.
I just wanted to suggest, and I had asked if I could go into one of their classrooms because a teacher saw me at the grocery store and invited me to come to her classroom one day. So we tried to make it work and then I got sick, so it didn't happen. But I would love to suggest that board members, whenever there's an opportunity and you want someone to come into the classroom, if we can have a chance to do that too, because there's nothing more fun than going into an elementary school building to begin with. And I've done it here before when my kids were in elementary. I did it in Philadelphia before as part of a Philadelphia program throughout the city, but I was in North Philly. And you can't even get started reading because, like you said, they're asking you 3,000 questions and telling you about their life story and why this is so awesome, blah, 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 blah. And it's like the most fun thing I think I've ever done related to school at all. So I'd love to do that. And I'd love to see the board members do that as well.
And I know last year I did, and the year before I did, I did bingo night at SRS, and I got into several conversations with the little people, and them telling me where to go and how to set up, because they just sent me into the room, and I guess I looked like a deer with headlights, and the little girl came over and she's like, oh, you just stand here and you hand these tickets out, and then they'll call them for the baskets. And I'm like, do I do anything with the baskets? No, you just hand the tickets out. So, and then I did, the May Day that they do at West,
Maybe, maybe it's fun.
yes, and that was really fun because the one was a wheel, it was like a spin the wheel, and the little boys got on there and they started betting and gambling. And they kept,
Oh, boy.
they kept coming back around.
Probability lesson.
Yeah, I think it was more like a math.
Thank you. Excellent clarification.
Spin the wheel, but and it landed on a color and they got a prize. So they kept coming around.
Good night.
Thank you.
And then the other one that I did was sack racing. And the one, the boy, no,
Sack racing?
I called the winner.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh.
that's an important distinction to make.
Exactly.
I'm trying to read you how to cause a deal with potato sack.
Yeah, I called the winner, but there was one little guy and he's actually my neighbor and they're Russian and Russian is his first language.
Yes.
So he was going really, really fast and falling over. And I said to him, I said, no, Roman, slow and steady wins the race. So you have to stay in control of your sack. So he started doing that and he kept winning all the races. And he came over high-fiving me. He was so proud because they won a prize when they won the race. And he had all these prizes. And the other kids were still hopping really fast and falling over. And he was going along.
We already found another supplemental. And we found the coach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right.
So thank you, Dr. Metzkowski. So, April meeting, is April the 17th. We're gonna have a world language, presentation from Dr. Pratt, also Newsella and AP Psychology. So there you go, Ms. Williams. Mr. Benzing's gonna talk about steel standards overview. That's coming. We've talked about that a number of times in this meeting. And then, Dr. Metzkowski is gonna talk about ELA pilot 3 to 5. So we have a full meeting, in April. April 17th is our next meeting. Ms. McCaskey Smith, may we adjourn?
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
That read across America, I think like a good idea.
I sent you an email.
would be
Are you off?
to Stop and read.
So.
So that, they do.
That is
A
for-
principle